Hi everybody and welcome again to Irukandji Toys tutorial. I'm Factor and this is another episode where I go through and show you all the different ways in which I make my toys, create my toys, cast my toys, paint my toys, just basically make and, have fun with my toys. By now you've probably seen the last episode, which was me putting together two-piece molds, which are the most common form of molds that most people use. Most people will never actually go beyond two-piece molds, but here's why I want to go through and show you how to do a multi-piece mold, which is 3 or 4 or 5 pieces, mostly concentrating on 3 pieces, and why this is kind of like an essential skill that you should really learn. Once you start to go into multi-piece molds, a whole different world of sculpting and putting your toys together becomes available. If you want to do single piece casts, right? You can do all kinds of complex work if you want to do multiple molds and then glue them together and do all that. And that's another video that I'll go into. But if you want to do a single cast, one piece mold, one 3-piece mold, but 1-piece toy, then creating a multi-part mold is fantastic. For me, it really opened up a lot of different things that I could do, and without having to do multiple molds and having to glue them together and doing stuff like that. So I'll go through a couple of the pieces that I've already done, and then I have a piece that I actually need to create a 3-piece mold for, and I'll go through how I do the mold layout and how I cast that and all the different stages of molding for that. Okay, so I have a couple of toys and a couple of molds here that I'm going to show you through and how I do my 3-piece molds. So this here is my Anuji. It's like a little robot dog thing that I did last year. Okay, now if you take a look at this, right, you'll see if I was to do a 2-piece mold straight down the middle here, these 4 legs would become trapped in the silicone and you wouldn't be able to pull it out. Okay, so I thought to myself, okay, well, I'll just have to create a 3-piece mold, spend a little tiny bit of extra time, and then that way it'll be nice and easy and I can get the legs done and all that. If this leg here had have been forward a bit more, I could have gotten away with doing a 2-piece mold. I could have just gone and kind of pulled it, like the mold line coming down here, and I could have done a 2-piece mold. But this leg was too far back. I didn't want to repose the leg, so I just decided that I would do a 3-piece mold for it. Okay, so this is the 3-piece mold for the Anuji. As you can see, yep, standard 2 pieces, etc., etc. But it has this piece, this little inset piece here. Okay, now that meant that when I was casting it, I can just open it up, pull the piece out, and then pull this out from between the legs, making it really easy, nice and simple. Okay, and it fits in there snug. You can see that I've got like the key lines and stuff in the sides here, okay, so that it doesn't slip around and it doesn't move when it's actually inside the mold. Okay, doesn't move at all, perfectly fine. Okay, so that was this 3-piece mold. So, you've seen the Grimecha before. Okay, now when I sculpted this, I had a choice. I could have this mouth here open, or I could have it closed. And it just looked a lot more effective when it was open. It looked a bit more menacing, a bit more cool. But the problem was, if I did a 2-piece mold for this, and I was filling it up, and it was coming in, the resin was coming up, this here would not cast. Okay, it would have had a massive air bubble in it and all that. I could have taken this off and created a separate mold and stuck it and glued it back on and then fixed it all up. But I really wanted to challenge myself on this and go, well, I just want to do this in one cast. I want to have it all in one go. It'll save me time later if I spend a bit more time now actually just doing a 3-piece mold. And I worked out a pretty cool way of doing this, because with a 3-piece mold, you can do all kinds of really cool shit with your fucking gates. You can gate stuff up against different sections of the mold, and the gates won't get stuck in the silicon, and they work really, really well. So this was a pretty big mold because of the fact that I had the arms coming up out the front here, so that increased the size of this silicon. I probably overused the silicon on this, but I did do some pretty intricate gating work with this. So I'll show you a couple of photos of my mold setup, and you can see how I've actually set up the plasticine and how I've built it all up here, and you can kind of get an idea as to how I'm setting up the three pieces and the three-piece mold and the gating. So this is inside the mold. You can see where it's all built up here on the arms. And say the Grimecha was in here, like this. Okay. I'm not going to throw him in here at the moment because... Oh, that's actually the backside. He would have been in that way. And then he would have been down in here, right? Okay. So he would have been down in there, and then I pulled him out. Okay. So standard, so that's built up. I did this side first, and then I came in and I did this side, right? So what I did when I was building this in was I sculpted a piece of plasticine, okay, that went in his mouth, and I don't really want to shove it in. I don't want to fuck up the paintwork and stuff like that. But it was in his mouth, and it was down like that. And the plasticine came up like this. You can see the keys here. The plasticine kind of came up like that, right? And that was the third piece. So I cast this, and I put the plasticine in on, and then I cast the second side, right? And then I poured the silicon down into here. I put spray mold, mold release. I put mold release in here, okay? And then I cast this piece here. Now, the cool thing about this is that I then could gate out all of the air bubbles. And you can see that there's gates down inside the silicon here, right? Might be able to see it a bit better on here. I could gate from the tip of the mouth all the way out, and then the air could flow from the tip of the mouth all the way out and there. That's how I negated the need to have air bubbles in here, and how I could actually, have overhangs, and I can sculpt overhangs and yet still cast them in a single piece, just using the gatings, right? So this was in here. Okay, and the gatings came out through here, and they came up on the top of this, right? So from the top of the mouth, they came from the top of the mouth all the way up along here, and they joined the gate here, and then came out. So, way back when, you saw me playing around with this in the demonstration. I kind of finished it off, polished it up. I thought it looked kind of cool. Little robot pony thing, another one. And I figured, well, look, all these legs are really, really close together. So I'm going to have to do a three-piece mold for this. Even if it's a really small piece, I'm still going to have to do a three-piece mold, right? So I am going to show you the mold layout with this, and show you how I actually do a three-piece mold using this small example here. Okay, so you can see my little dude here. I think that this is probably about enough room. There's just enough room on here. There's enough room on here. I'm a bit worried about in here in terms of bubbles and stuff. Again, I'm going to have to move my mold around and shake it. I'll show you that. I'm thinking I might put a gate, but from here to the tip of here, just to allow stuff to flow through. Again, there have been instances where, like, fine tips and stuff, especially if they're at the base, there can get little bubbles and stuff stuck in here. It should be okay. All in all, though, this shouldn't really need any gates at all. everything should flow nicely up through there. As I said, yeah, maybe one between there just to help the flow through of the liquid. So I'm just going to do a singular build of one. I'm going to have the plasticine come up to here, and I'm going to put some plasticine across probably from here across here. Okay, and I'm going to block off this center piece here. Okay, and then I'll have another layer here, and that should be okay. Okay, so I'll just fast forward through this. Okay, so I'm just going to trace, and I'm going to dig a hole for this. Trace with my pokey stick, and trace, 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 trace. Tracey, tracey, trace, trace, trace. Cool. And now I'm just going to dig this out so that I can push this down into it. Ah, shit. Man, you know what? I always forget this. I always forget the most essential part of doing all this shit. One of the most essential things when you're doing all this shit and making toys is Muckgully. Not the store-bought shit. If you've ever tried Muckgully, and if you haven't, man, you really need to, because it's like Korean rice beer. It's one of the best fucking things in the world. But if you have tried it, and you've tried the store-bought stuff, that shit, meh, it's okay. But the good shit, the best shit, home fucking made Muckgully. Straight out of fermentation. One of the most divine, beautiful fucking drinks known to man. Thank you, Korea. Thank you, Muckgully. Thank you, toys. Drink fucking Muckgully. Okay, so you can see I've got my piece in here. Cool. So, the problem with this one is that I'm going to have to do some tricky work here. I'm going to have to, because the head is on an angle, and I wanted to have, like, you know, the piece coming down here, like the mold split, maybe. I'm going to have to dig out here a bit. So I have to dig this down and kind of put like a bit of a angle down on this. I'm not sure how well this will work. It's just a funny angle for the head. It gives it a bit, it's not straight on or anything, right? So if I wanted to have the mold line, like, I'm going to have to bring it down on the top of this crest here, unless I want to angle the piece. Because if I do that, like, I can pop it in, I can put the mold line going across there and the eye, but I don't know. Let's try to do it this way and see how it goes. And I just build it up along this edge and kind of push it down. Oh shit. I kind of like push it down into, see how there's a gap in here, this big gap here? I'm going to try to have the mold line come along there and up. And then I'm going to build up a little bit up here. Right. So I'm going to clean the other side of the plasticine off anyways, so it'll be okay if I lay it down like this. And I'll build the plasticine up along the edge here. And it's okay, it's only plasticine. It's not going to mess up my master. I can pull the plasticine off of this really quite easily. In retrospect, to be really honest with you, I probably should have done the plasticine molding with it flipped the other way and built up to the crest rather than on the face. But I'm going to do this. I can come back in and clean. Once I've got the silicone in and on this piece, I'll come back and I flip it and I take the plasticine off. I'll clean off any of the plasticine that's kind of stuck onto here. But I want a nice smooth mold line that's going to go all the way across the face, like right down the middle, like a nice middle split here. So I'm just going to put it like this. And then it's pretty well even right here. So I'll just really adjust this and make sure that it's going to be nice and up on the edges and stuff like that. Right, like you can see at the moment, I just need to fill in all these gaps and that. It's going to be a 3-piece mold, so it's going to take you extra time. Like 3-piece molds take a bit of setting up to do. But what they do allow is saving of the time later when you're joining up. Like if you're doing this in a multi-piece mold, like a multiple molds, like you're doing like 5 molds and then just gluing stuff together, there's a nice aesthetical look to that, which I actually really quite like. It's like that nice joined look. But if you want it to be a whole contiguous piece, it'll save you time because you're just casting once and that's it. So I'm just going to shove some down in here and try to get that line down there, down in the hole. It's like a nice little valley that's going to come down and dip right down into there. And that's fine because silicone loves to find gaps, man. Silicone's a beautiful thing that just likes to find holes and, you know. So what I'm actually going to do is I'll just roll out a bit of a little snaky. I call these snakes. Little snake there. I'm going to put this going around here so I can find the edge line. Sometimes I'll just put the plasticine down and then backfill onto the plasticine. And I'll put this down into here, right on the edge. Now I don't want to cover this, right? Like I don't want the plasticine going over it. I want it to be right on that edge of the piece. So I've got to push it back a bit. But first I've got to push it in, right? Not quite sure how well that's worked. I keep on hitting the camera here with my hat. I need some water. Push it in. There's a little hole there. And see what I'm doing is I'm just kind of rolling. Like I roll this that way on the edges and it kind of pushes and flattens it down, but it doesn't give you that edge lip gap that you want to just avoid when you're doing edging and stuff with plasticine. Because that's how you get your flashing, as I explained in the last video. Now I think that looks okay in there. Let's just smooth that out a bit. I can't see any gap, but I'll come back and I'll check it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back through and finalize this. But before I do that, I'm going to show you the key to me doing a 3-piece mold here. I'm going to fill in this area here, right? So that I'm just casting this piece right here. And I'll come back and I'll clean it out and all that kind of stuff after I've cast the silicone. So for now, I'm just going to whack this in here. And it's like a plug, right? And I'm kind of doing it on the inner edge here, like not too far in. If it's too far in, you'll be popping stuff out and it won't come out as easily, like when you're trying to pop it out through the legs. But I'm doing it so that it's kind of inwards, and if there is a seam line and there is flashing, it's not as obvious if you don't, if you're a lazy bastard and you don't want to sand it all off and do all that kind of stuff. The seam line won't really be as obvious. Never put seam lines like on the outside here or things like that. It's just, there's no need for it. There's no reason for it. And to be really honest with you, it's unsightly. I mean, look, you're going to sand this shit down anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But for me, just imagine if you were going to pull this out of a mold, not clean it up at all, and then paint it and, sell it or give it away or do whatever you do with your toys, play with them and all that. How well you can do this without having to come and clean it all up and sand it. So you'll see now there's a plug piece right in between these legs here. And sometimes just before I put the Lego in, I'll just do that. Right. My Lego will pop in there. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to go back through and I'm going to finish cleaning this all off. And then I'm going to, put one gate in and we're done and we're ready for the very first kind of like cast. Okay, so I've cast these two molds, and what I'm going to do is I'll pull them off the plate, and I'm going to set up the second piece for these, for the 3-piece mold. So I don't want to remove too much of the structure. Yeah, shit. I just want to remove enough that I can get down to the piece, and I can remove the plasticine. We'll see now how well I close this up. It doesn't look to be too much leakage on this one, so this one should be good. I'm using a different silicone for this piece. This is an Australian silicone. It's a 500 from Solid Solutions. Very cheap, 5 litres, 100 and something bucks. Much cheaper than the other barn stuff that I was using, and to be honest, I like it a lot more. Okay, so just peeling this back. And I'm going to keep that in there just for the moment. Okay, because that's where I'm going to do the third piece. Wrong tool. I just want to get this plasticine out without breaking it or anything, just so it comes out one nice piece, because otherwise I'm going to have to clean a lot more than I used to. This is the really good thing about plasticine. So I'm just going to check down there and take a look. So there's a bit of plasticine there in the mouth, which I'll get rid of. Actually, no, I don't think that there is. Maybe a little bit of silicone just on the edge there. This is pretty clean. Yep, that's to be expected. There was a bit of silicone at the edges there, but apart from that, nothing's leaked down. Seems to be quite a nice clean mold. Maybe a little bit there, just a little bit, but I'm not sure if that's going to be too much of an issue. I'll just pull that out. So you want to be careful when you're using a scalpel next to your master. You don't want to... You really don't want to scratch your master at all. But I want to get rid of this little bit of silicone right here. Otherwise, I'll get some bad flashing on there. I'm much happier with these molds than I was with the two-piece molds that I did. Yeah. Much cleaner. Although, I have since cast some resin in the two-piece mold that I previously did, and there wasn't a lot of flashing on it. And there's a little bit of plasticine there. But I don't want to dislodge the gate. And very carefully just get rid of that. There. Little tiny bit. Even little tiny bits of plasticine can put little defects and stuff into your piece. That looks fine. Not too bad. Not too bad. Okay, so I'm going to build the third piece here. So you notice that I've left this in. So I'm just going to fill in here and make that a bit nice and clean. And I'm going to fill in there. Really, a three-piece mold is that simple. I don't want to lock these legs in too much though. So the really cool thing about doing three-piece and multi-piece molds is that it really does give you, as I've mentioned before, a lot of great opportunities to do some fancy stuff with gates. These are really simple pieces, but if you have a really complicated piece with lots of underhangs and all that kind of stuff, you can gate all of that stuff out and you can do really complex stuff without the need for a pressure pot or anything like that. A lot of people have, often not done certain toys or worked in certain ways with their masters because they believe that they don't have a pressure pot and they just simply can't cast it. But it's not true. Truth is that if you do things with multi-piece molds and you learn how to gate and vent stuff off properly, you can do a lot of stuff that people just don't think is possible. So I'll just put some in the back, right, just in the back here. And just take my little silicone tip. Don't want this to be hanging out too much beyond the legs because I don't want it to pull too badly off the mold. It's a pretty smooth. The legs are not textured or anything like that, so it should the silicone should release off the resin pretty well. Alright, a little bit of water now. A little bit of water just to smooth this down, smooth down the edges. Make sure I've got those nice. And I didn't have the angle right. And you probably couldn't have just seen that. So that's okay. Dumbass. That's it. Now, very, 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 very important. Okay. And I hope I did it on the other side, but I can't remember now. make sure you key this piece. This piece has to be keyed as well as you possibly can, because you don't want it slipping and sliding inside the mold. I can't remember if I keyed the other side. I'm pretty sure that I did. I hope that I did. Otherwise, I'll have to cut a key out or something, or I don't know. Might be, yeah, it won't be too late because I can cut into the silicon when I cast this piece, but we'll check it. So these are really quite small, so I'm going to need to find something that's like maybe a really small brush, and I'll just put some really small keys in here. Needs a key and a key there, and maybe just a little tiny thing there. Right, this will hold it in place so that it doesn't slip around. It's a very small piece of silicon, and the last thing you want is for this piece to be slipping around in your mold and for the legs to be all deformed and fucked up, and yeah, you don't want that shit. Okay, so key, maybe 2 there, maybe a bigger one in the middle. And then another one there, and another one there. And for the 3-piece, that's it for that one. Alright, so now I just basically build up the Lego again, however I did it last time, which I cannot remember, but it doesn't matter, it's Lego. I have problems here. See the gap that I just left there? Yeah, so I think I need to put a bit more plasticine down in here. I can cut that away on the next piece, that's not a big deal. But if I do it now, then that's fine as well. Most of this I'm going to sand down the bottom of the feet anyway, so let's just yeah, okay, so that was stupid. Just cut that out. At least it'll be nice and tight against there. Okay. Cool. I might come back and put a little bit underneath there. This piece isn't directly yeah, I might just leave that and cut those out afterwards. So that's fine. So that's that one done. So let's take a look at this one. Now this one is a little different because this one only has the 2 legs, but it had a really strange enough shape that I couldn't do a straight down the middle cast with it. So I'm going to be a little more creative with this 3-piece mold. And it looks like a bit has leaked through on the edges, but that's okay. So let's just alright, let's just peel it back off here. So let's just do this carefully. Don't want to pull that piece off. And plasticine just comes off nicely like that. Not leaving anything behind, and perfect. Cool. So no silicone around the edges, it's just from here. That's to be a little expected. That's fine. Now let me show you why this is a little strange. It had the 2 feet, and if I had done a straight down, it would have locked in to the silicone. I don't like locking things. Yeah, it pulls apart at the mold and all that kind of stuff. I could have done a 2-piece, maybe right down the middle, and then these two would have been the vents, and then I just, pull the mold off and all that, but it would start tearing and doing weird things. And to be completely honest with you, I don't mind doing a 3-piece mold. For me, they're relatively simple and quick anyways. So what I'm going to do is, what is that? Oh, hello there. Yeah, there's a bit of plasticine stuck right in there. Trick with the plasticine is that you want to get it in one globule. You don't want to pull it out in little pieces and that. Okay, I'm pretty sure I've got most of that now. So, not entirely sure what I wanted to do here. Okay, I can either do a piece that comes up to here on the front here and is kind of underneath and running underneath there, which is what I'm pretty sure I'm going to do. So I'm going to fill all this in here and kind of bring it up the back here, right? So that when I put the 2 molds together, I can put in another piece in here and it should lock in and be okay. That is my theory. It's a little complicated, this one. So either which way I go, I'm going to have problems. So I'm going to have to end up pulling the mold through these feet. If I put it in here, then the problem is that I can only key it from this side and maybe from this side. So I'm going to try that. It might be a big fail, but let's give it a shot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in here and see the feet here. I'm going to actually now I run a risk here, okay? And the risk is that these feet are not going to work. Honestly, it's a poor master design on my behalf for having the feet like this. The problem here is that the top of this mold here is going to be really quite short, so I need to do something. I'm going to probably have to block out some of this because the bottom of this is going to be really, really thin. Well, we can only experiment, and the good thing is it's a very small piece, so it's a small piece, so if it doesn't work, I can try something else. I'll just do it up until that vent. I don't want it to be a tiny, tiny, tiny piece, so I'm bulking it out a bit more to this side so that it doesn't just fall around and fall out of place and all that kind of thing. I'm not sure how well this will work, but experimentation is the key here. I love 3-piece molds because they really make you start thinking about the whole process of how you cut. I love doing 3-piece molds because they really make you think a lot about how you cast, how you design certain ways to make the air flow in certain directions. It's a thought process, and I think that is one of the things that I love about making toys, is the whole thought process behind it. I'm constantly thinking of different ways in which to make things work. So I'm just going to pull that up on his tail a bit there, but I'll make that a little thicker so it's, again, nicely locked in. You notice the gate's just under there, and that's good. So if I want to pull, I could pull gates up on this plasticine now, right? If I really wanted to. And this is how you can do all the intricate stuff with your 3-piece molds. At some stage in the future, I'll do something, I'll make a toy or something like that, which will have a lot of underhangs and all that kind of thing, and I'll really show you the effectiveness of how these 3-piece molds work. But for now, just starting out simple. So I got this gap down in here, so I might just push some. I'm going to leave that. Just make it go. And you kind of also look for the natural contours of your piece, because that's where the mold line will be, right? So you try to go up on the edges of things and that, so that when you come to sanding it off and that, your mold lines, they aren't as obvious. And if they're on edges and stuff, they're actually a lot easier to get rid of and to make not obvious. Alright. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Okay. So that's the 2 pieces ready. And I will spray these with mold release. And then I will build back up the Lego, and let's get casting on these, shall we? Let's just get rid of some of this extra stuff. So we're going to cast the second piece. Then we'll come back and we'll pull all of the plasticine out, and then we'll spray, and then we'll cast the third piece where the plasticine is. That's it. That's really it. Okay, so I have both my molds here, and both sides are done. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to start to rip off all of this. Now that we've done both sides, I don't need this Lego anymore. I mean, I could keep it, but it's a little hard to pull everything out and keep it in place. It's easier when I'm doing the third mold piece if I actually just set it up the same way as I would set up casting for resin. So just 2 pieces of wood and some elastic bands. Okay. Cool. So that's my plasticine there for that one. And this one, yep, silicone set really nice. I do love this Solid Solutions 500 silicone. Okay, and there's the third piece for this one. Now, the trick here is to remove this plasticine without pulling the mold too far apart. So let's just see if we can do that. It can be a little tricky sometimes because you want to get the plasticine out in one piece. You don't want to leave bits of plasticine behind because obviously then your silicone won't cast on those bits of plasticine and you'll fuck up the mold. Sometimes I do have to pull it apart a little bit. I try to avoid disturbing the master inside as much as I possibly can, however. But sometimes it's just a little hard to pull out, especially if it's, you know, doing little bits and weird things. So let's just pull this gently away, not too much, and see if I can maneuver this out without pulling it away from the master too much. And sometimes this is where your tools can come in handy. Good thing about plasticine is it does want to generally stay in one piece. Right. So that seems good. A bit worried about this toe here. I don't know what'll happen there. It'll cast in and hopefully it'll go in there, and once the master's out, hopefully it'll seal okay and the toes will cast alright. So that's these two pieces cleaned out. The plasticine's out. It's not too long a process, just take a bit of time. I'll probably, you know, brush down a bit of alcohol, get rid of any other little bits and pieces. Then I'll spray mold release down in here. I'll generally get a little brush with these ones. I'll get a little brush once I sprayed the release and try to just wipe down as much of the silicone as I possibly can, because there's stuff that's all the way down in there. Look, if you really wanted to, you can pull this apart, but I'll find that it doesn't give you as good a mold. The silicone should find any of the little gaps and any of the, you know, holes that it needs to go down. It's extremely good at finding like holes and stuff to go into. And then once I've done that, then the mold will be finished. So spray release now, a little bit more silicone in each one, and then we'll cut it open and open it up and take a look at it, and if we need to fix up the mold from there, then we can fix up the mold from there. Okay, great. So I've got my two molds here that I've created, and I'm going to crack them open. You'll notice that I've used a different kind of silicone to the other silicone. I don't know. It should be alright. Never tried it before, but I had some of this pinky seal left over, so I'm just going to give it a go. So this is my favorite part. Let's crack this open and see what we get here. And hopefully it's worked. So I'm not too worried about this. It's this mold release on here. Opens up really nicely. That's really nice. And I'll just have to cut a bit of this off here. Looks like it's molded really quite nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chop off the excess here. Just pop that out. Looks okay. And just chop this out. So that should just pull straight out now. Not too much effort. Right. So it looks fine to me. Looks perfect, actually. So there's the master. There's the third piece. So what I'll do is I will just chop out some of this. So I've got pour spouts. Go around and do this on the feet here like this. And that's my third piece for putting in there. And should be great. So let's do the second one. Just move this back here. Nice, easy split. Now this was the complicated one that I was really quite worried about. May not have got some mold release down in that little bit there. So I will, let's have a look here. Maybe I'll just cut that. Right, it's on a gate. Cool. So that looks good. Let's pull this out and see what happened here. Okay, that looks pretty good. And hopefully, because, you know, the way that this pulls out is the way that it'll pull out of the resin. I'm going to have to cut some of this stuff off on the feet here. But if I pull this out, it should pull out really nicely. And what I'll do is I'm going to cut down on there. And then it should fit in there. Yep, just like that. And then this will fit in there. And you got the two paws where the feet are going to be. So I'll probably do a couple of casts on this and just test the mold a bit and see how it works. This here really worries me. It's just my shitty. I should have sculpted it better for this mold, for this piece, and not had the feet like that, because that could rip off, maybe. But all in all, they look pretty good. So there's the gates here. And I can just cut those out a bit more. I did have my scissors around here somewhere. I think that one's fine. So let's have a look at the gates on this one. So there's a gate there. And I just, because the metal doesn't always just reach right on the edge, I just snip. Okay. Anyways, so there you go. I just need to run a couple of cast tests. Here's the third piece, you know. That'll lock into there. Oops, wrong way around. That'll lock into there. And this one will lock into here. And that way you can do the complex leg pieces. It's nice. It's nicely locked. Seems to work fine. Looks good. I'm going to go and run a couple of test casts on this. And that'll be it. Okay guys, so that's how I create my 3-piece molds. It's not a very complicated procedure. You just have to put a bit of thought into it, work out your gating, do your mold setup, and it takes maybe one extra cast of your silicone, and that's it. It's really not that complicated. And you can really do some complicated stuff with it, and you can cast complicated pieces. You can take that and do 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces if you really wanted to, and you had something that you thought might require that. But one of the most important things about doing a multi-piece mold is the fact that you can do those vent gates out of really complicated areas. So you don't have to rotocast things all the time. It might take a little bit more to set up, but, you know, you can do whatever the fuck you want, really, if you just take the time to do it. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this, please hit subscribe. Again, I've got a lot more stuff coming up. I'm enjoying doing this so far, so I'll keep doing it until time comes when I get bored of doing it and I just want to make toys and not have to record shit and worry about turning on mics and forgetting to press record and, you know, running out of booze, because that happens sometimes when you're recording and it's really hard. It's really hard. Anyways, thanks again for watching. See yous. Okay, far out, man. Why do I always do this? I always forget to tell you. Like, one of the most important things when you're making a 3-piece mold is to make sure you have plenty of fucking wine. And if you'll notice, this one's full this time. If you don't drink alcohol, please just drink soft drink or soda. Soda. Soda? Soda. Chowder. See, now I'm just talking New England. Chowder. Let's not do that anymore.